There have even been Mexicans who pass by with crying children or on other occasions laughing mockingly wherever I am or in front of my house as if as if to make fun of that situation. They do the same with other serious matters as well. They do this so that when you're an adult, it's hard for you to find a partner to have sex with. You can't even get rid of that insistent sexual desire that you attribute to sexual development during adolescence. But you continue into adult adulthood and still can't get rid of that sexual desire. Sometimes it drives you crazy to go out and find someone who can satisfy that sexual desire. Sometimes you get that feeling that people who have these powers and spiritual gifts they get from black magic, uh, you're the only ones who can satisfy that sexual desire. They also do this because they know that when they force you to leave Guatemala, you won't find anyone to have sex with when you return. That's that's what happened to me 4 years ago since I returned to Guatemala. The dilemma with this situation is that they supposedly do this so you can try it in the future. That is in adulthood, Mexicans come to bother you for having migrant relatives and they want to prevent you from being petitioned because they'll perform witchcraft or santeria on you to have problems with alcoholism and drug addiction. By not practicing witchcraft or santeria, like magic, one could could not prove it, and they even try to make it seem like witchcraft doesn't exist. But in Tijuana, they showed me that it exists, and some even used it to make people have problems with alcoholism and drug addiction. This is my this is why Mexicans come to Guatemala to keep an eye on you, to tell even possibly to U.S. Immigration what they saw at first glance. You were on drugs, plus drinking beer, but they don't say that they had witchcraft or santeria performed on that person. So to cause that that situation to happen, he left work, but they don't say that there were Mexicans at that workplace in Guatemala who gave bad comments of him and even performed witchcraft on him so he couldn't work properly, becoming clumsy or feeling like there's something like a presence that makes you feel a little weak when you need to unload something at work is witchcraft, and they show it to you when you return to Guatemala after being undocumented in Mexico and California. They do all of this so you can't be petitioned. Even if you say you're not interested, they want to keep bothering you and then say you're boring because you keep on talking about this topic. The dilemma is that even though you were a minor, even though you were beaten at school, people you realize as an adult were Mexicans using what they call powers, the gifts the spiritual gifts they get from black magic. In case you try to defend yourself, or even the abusive teacher just wanted to label it as bullying, even though the reality is because you have migrant relatives. By the way, those people who studied in my classroom at the junior private high school, I never saw them again in Guatemala. If it was sexual abuse by a Mexican adult against a Guatemalan minor, it would have to be considered as if they tried to help him because they knew they were going to try to get him into alcoholism and drug addiction, which he would have no way to proving. And they would even try to punish someone who even asks for it as a favor to save that then minor, so that in the future this come to Guatemala to harass a relative of Guatemalan migrant. Also at school where I studied, there was a classmate who would be 18 years old in a few months. According to what I heard in the conversations they had in class when a teacher was absent, they didn't let me participate in those conversations. It was, don't be so. Who told you to participate in this conversation? So it was pretty much what happened. But according to what I heard to the conversations they had, they wouldn't let me participate. They acted like they didn't like me. That classmate was apparently also Mexican. Once the whole people of that private junior high school went to Campo Marte. Yeah, the translation would be Mars field. Yeah, it's just a second. It's a soccer field here in Guatemala. Because it was a physical education day, I arrived late and didn't know how to get to Campo Marte. Campo Marte. They told me to stay in the classroom, and that day, this classmate arrived who was months away from being of age. We were alone in the classroom, and he approached me from behind. Out of nowhere, he tried to grab me by the waist to unbutton my pants, but I moved away from him, and at that moment, the school bell rang. I now understand that most of the students in my classroom seem to be Mexican, even some of those who studied in other classrooms, including just a second. I now understand that most of the students in my classroom seem to be Mexican, even some of those who studied in other classrooms, including the one where. So, including the one where my sister studied. I remember that day when this happened with this classmate. There was a classmate who said, "Are you okay?" Other classmate asked her what happened, to what the first classmate replied, "You don't know? They were going to do something to someone." The other classmate said, "They asked for that from up there. That's why the guys are laughing up there." On the second history of the junior high school facility, it was high school. They do that so that when you leave the country at the border, they tell you All those things you didn't tell anyone just to annoy you and make you feel bad for all those situations you went through. I haven't seen any of the classmates I started with that junior high school again. Only one who acted like he was gay but turned out to have a girlfriend. Friends even came to Guatemala to make me understand that the people who studied at the same school I attended when I was a teenager are actually Mexican. There is no one who physically resembles that person in Guatemala, but I've already met two Mexicans who look physically to that guy. I even remember that there's someone from a neighborhood across from the one where I live who has a twin who was supposedly murdered or killed. I don't know if it's true or if he returned to Mexico. As I said, I've already met two Mexicans in Guatemala who look a lot like him. I don't know why they do it. I always ran into a lady who attended the school where I attended, the junior high school, the private junior high school I attended. She insistently asked me about my relative who is now in the US, in the United States. Now I realize that she and her sister are Mexicans. There was another lady who also spoke to her and studied in my classroom in that junior high school, but I didn't see her again in Guatemala. The fact that they always ask me about my relative who is in the United States is because of those games that people play. It's not because they want to know if you have communication with your relatives. It's not until later when they get you in those games where they ask you about your relative in the United States. It's because in that game, they challenge among themselves to let you know that they want you to leave Guatemala because you are in their way so that others can go to the United States. You listen to the sound behind me, it's someone who knows I'm recording and comes here around me, don't know why. That's what I mean. So, that's what's happening. In return to what I was reading, I even remember a girl who studied in my classroom at that junior high school talking about how they were gonna hit a man's nose. I don't know what else she said they were going to do to him. They told this to my relative who is now in the United States when we attended that junior high school. The person who hurt my nose and offered me drugs used to say he was from security S as in saying, A as in away, K as in kilo, E as in Edward, R as in rare, T as in tomato, I as in igloo, one like 1 2 1. The same neighborhood where this girl is from. When she said that she started talking, when she said that, she started talking as if she was possessed and felt a strange presence but what they say is supposedly to happen. Something else happened when I was 16. There was someone who didn't seem to be Guatemalan who talked to me about having sex with him. I even ran into him on my way home. He was driving in a car. He seemed to have a good job because he was wearing nice clothes. I got into his vehicle because he was insisting and I was so naive and drove to what was then just a construction site in El Naranjo, a Orange Country translated into English, 74 of Mexico, MIXCO. He parked the car and started trying to be intimate with me. I remember seeing him on a news report from the Guatemalan government secretary several years later. After that, I never saw him again in Guatemala. I think he was Mexican because he didn't seem to be from anywhere else in Guatemala. There was also another one who was supposedly Mexican who said out loud that he liked minors, but I had the feeling he was saying it so I could hear him. I don't know what his real intention was. It turns out that the gay people I saw in Central Park in San Juan, Guatemala City, were Mexicans who came as spies in that immigration game they have between Mexico, Guatemala, and I don't know what other countries, because I met several who claimed to be pimps, who claimed to be endurance, and that they were going to the U.S. I believe it at that time. But after entering the United States undocumented, I realized it was a lie. That they were going to the United States, that they were only there as spies. I don't really know what they gained by playing the role of spy, because if you passed by there every day, you would have seen them every day in Central Park. And security too, yes, as in, just a second. You listen the car and good. And the car and the truck. They were both making noises, one in front of me and the other one behind me. That's how they let you know that they are in a cahoots. They are coming Mexican children. Let's see what's happened. What happens? In the security 2, S as in saying, A as in away, K as in kilo, E as in Edward, R as in rare, T as in tomato or tomato, I as in igloo, 2 like 1, 2. They are talking loud, so I have to pause the record. They were using my aunt's name. Let's see if they see it now.
¿Dónde venden? ¿Cómo se llama? Hielo.
Aquí en el Super 24.
¿Dónde estamos desde la cara?
Aquí
They
donde
didn't say that.
aquí a la esquina.
They know who I am. They know
Ay,
my
pero
aunt's
tú
name.
mejor lo acompañas a él. O Margarita.
¿Te conoce? ¿Quién ya te conoce de Hanna?
They're chasing me. They're following me. I don't know. Here in my own country.
Yo porque la miro que puro
They're gonna step.
creador con su...
But the thing is that they don't say it up front. Like, we know who you are and what we want. That's what I hate. And they should be a lot of people, not just one or two. If it's not that, they use their witchcraft. So, sí, saben el nombre de mi tía, saben quién soy, por eso es que andan acá. Lo que molesta es de que no te dicen las cosas de frente. Y tiene que ser el montón. O si no, su brujería. No, qué vergüenza, la verdad. I wasn't expecting anything of this happening. I was alone here and they came out of nowhere. So now that I need to keep on recording, I have to move from here.
Está bien.
Sí.
They make threats of death to you at the border, but they come nicely to be nice in your country, but they don't tell you what they want from you. Te hacen amenazas de muerte en la frontera, pero vienen a tu país a hacerse los buena onda. Pero no te dicen que es lo que quieren de vos. As I'm saying, they don't do that alone. Nunca lo hacen solos, como lo dije.
¿Quién?
So I had to find another place where I could have the environment to record. I have to make it clear it's not me who's following them. They're coming to my country. Y tengo que dejarlo claro, no soy yo el que lo sigue. Son ellos los que vienen a mi país, vienen a donde estoy. They come to the place where I am at. So I want to continue recording because I want to finish this situation. So in this security 2 neighborhood, there was someone who sexually abused me when I was just 6 years old. I'm mentioning the neighborhood because they knew what was happening and no one said anything. But when they tried to make me leave Guatemala, they treated me as if I were a criminal. That person who committed the sexual abuse against me for several years once asked me, "Are you going to let people leave?" I think he meant they wanted to go to the United States. Several people in my neighborhood left even though they knew what was happening. Some even took their children with them. In the case of one of my relatives, there was a woman who interfered with his marriage even though she had children from other men. My relative left first asking for an American visa to my aunt. That's how they know who you are because they were using, well, they were calling somebody else with my aunt's name. They already know what you are doing. Así es como saben, le hacen saber a uno que saben qué es lo que uno está haciendo, porque la señora está usando el nombre de mi tía para llamar a alguien por ese nombre, a alguien más por ese nombre. So they caused her youngest daughter to fall from the 3rd floor in the school and died. I know it's witchcraft because I wasn't afraid of heights before, and after they threatened to kill me in Tijuana, I became afraid of heights again. My relative left because, according to what I heard, they harassed him when he went out, just like they did it so that I'd leave Guatemala. They do this to make you leave Guatemala. So, just a second. When he arrived in the United States, he received that woman who interfered with his marriage. He returned to Guatemala and she stayed in the United